Hello, everyone. This is LeiLani Cauthen, the CEO of the Learning Council and EduJedi Grandmaster. Here's our activity I-9, about understanding the professional grade learning software scene. Schools right now, they're scrambling to get a full coverage model of digital because they have to live in a sort of a highly flexible world of, are we going to be in school? Are we going to not be in school? What is happening? And then some of the students who want to have totally altered hybrid schedules. They might want to be on campus sometimes, but maybe not all the time. And really the expectations have shifted a lot, which is causing schools to have to look at exactly what they're doing with professional grade and even their own in-house built software. So we have with us today Morri Pace. Hi, Morri, who's coordinator of innovative learning from Powhatan County Public Schools in Virginia. Did I say Powhatan right?
It's Powhatan.
Powhatan? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, great. It was so good to have you, Morri, and we're going to have a good conversation. And our favorite EduJedi Knight, Mark, Superintendent up at Meriden Public in Connecticut. Hi, Mark. So nice to see you.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Okay, so we're going to have this conversation also starting with Dr. Wendy Oliver, who's representing that professional grade side, to be able to talk to us about kind of what's up from that professional company angle. All right, so starting with Dr. Wendy Oliver, who's the Chief Learning Officer for EdisonLearning, and Zach Simon, who's the Assistant Director of Instruction and Advisement from Edison. A little overview about EdisonLearning. Go ahead, Wendy.
Yeah, thank you, LeiLani. First, I want to say thank you so much for letting us be involved in this important work. I know everyone has so much going on right now, and these definitions are really going to help with some of the things that we're seeing with digital in the classrooms, especially as we address the pandemic. EdisonLearning has been around for about 30 years, believe it or not, and that sounds like a long time in the ed tech space, right? And we have digital curriculum as well as instructors who work in many states to teach students across the country. And we have approximately 150, a little bit more, middle and high school courses. We offer tutoring. So we are really here to serve as a partner with school districts, especially as they take on challenges now, but we work with our partners in a variety of ways. So I'm excited, LeiLani. I think we've got some great examples to help conceptualize some of the terms that we're going to look at today. So just thank you for having us here.
Yeah, and we're going to put Zach on tap to do some screen sharing later on. But, professional grade software right now, some companies are seeing 1,000% growth. And really that comes down to the work of putting all these lessons together. It's a lot on teachers. So let's start with Morri. Can you give us a little background on what's happening for you out there in Virginia?
Sure. We're able last year actually to have our K through 5 students starting in October. They were back full time. We also had a virtual program open for them. We did have our secondary students were on that hybrid model where they came for 2 days and then had 3 days of virtual learning, which really meant that they saw their teacher once for 90 minutes a week. And then Wednesdays, which was amazing, we had Wednesdays that were a support day. So anybody could come into the building, either requested or especially like our CTE students that needed seat hours for working with construction or welding or things like that. So that was how we managed last year. We also then have our students that are regularly on the virtual Virginia platform. So Virginia does have a statewide online platform that you can purchase seats into that all the divisions can use. And then we also had some other classes that were specialty that we don't offer, that we would use a packaged program platform, kind of this professional grade resource. One of the things that we did realize over the past year and a half is that our specialists are amazing and gathering resources, and we have all of these products from the instructional technology side that we have purchased, But what we really had to focus on this summer was having it strategic in their actual development of lesson planning curriculum, where it's, I'm going to take this resource and I'm going to take this technology and I'm going to see how they dovetail together in order to just everybody else. Otherwise, they didn't know what they could use and when they could use it. And so we really had to kind of provide some structures and making sure, because we don't offer a textbook, right? So we have all of these resources that they could use, but it takes a lot of time. I was a former online teacher for 7 years. It takes a lot of time to build good, solid curriculum with directions that everyone can follow, whether they're in the classroom or not in the classroom with you. And that was one of our biggest things, is really having teachers realize that they needed to give directions that could be read and understood in completion of something when students were not with them. And that was a learning curve for our teachers in the past year and a half, and something that we're still trying to focus with them on. Even, you know, in your directions, you need to have how it's submitted, because they would be submitting it all different ways, and that would be confusing for parents as well. We also really tried to streamline what we're doing, and we offered a lot of self-paced and group, where you might have done something on your own, but then we came together as kind of like a flip model PD for our instructional technology purchases. So we had a lot of vendors coming in doing presentations, and then work groups would happen this summer and over last year, so that our teachers are using the resources that have already been vetted. But some of them love to go purchase things that are not necessarily vetted. And we have a wonderful family in our community that actually gives every teacher $1,000 to spend. And so sometimes that's really great, and sometimes you know, there's not too much compliance that has to go through for them to choose what they're going to spend it on. And then also with all these grant monies coming in of, you know, what technology that we're going to purchase, teachers may really like it, they know the name of it, but it's not the best option. And so trying to convince them that something else is instructionally better, even though the kids may like playing the game on this other one more. And so trying to balance that, and then how quickly can something be implemented? How quickly can teachers learn how to use it, and how easy it is for students to be able to use, and it's really for parents, for our littles especially, that are the daycare centers. So really just thinking about all of those different facets when we're looking at purchasing and looking at what we're being able to offer to our staff as far as curriculum resources.
That's a lot. Not only huge complexity, but putting out fires every day. No, you can't use that. Okay, that's fine. Okay, no, you can't. No, stop it. Well, interesting. Thank you so much, Morri. Okay, so Mark, tell us what's up with you in this whole of, you know, the transitions.
Sure. Thanks, LeiLani. So for us, last year, we did offer in-person learning from before Labor Day to throughout the school year. We never had to close down a school, but we also offered parents the choice, and about 30% of our families chose a remote option. As a district, we were already one-to-one. We had single sign-on. We had digital content embedded into core curriculum. So content that our students, our staff, and our families were already familiar with. And I think what we saw during the pandemic is everyone wanted to help. So a lot of vendors were saying, hey, it's free, we'll give you access to, and some of it's great stuff, but some of it might create more problems for us than we were ready to handle. So we did our best to hold the line on what we already knew, what we were comfortable with using, and not reach out and take all those free options that were available to us. I think in general, our experience with free or teachers choosing a product, we have some data privacy concerns that would open up from those products as well. And it's also, I think, letting our families know that they're always being tracked on those free products as well. moving forward to this school year in Connecticut, and we're 2 hours from Boston, 2 hours from New York City, smack in the middle of Connecticut. Right now, there's no state required remote options. So most school systems are going to do their best to go back in person with the understanding that we have to be prepared and nimble and flexible if we have to make a change. But I think our approach moving forward would be similar to it was last year, that we need to use what we know, what our families are familiar with, what our students and staff are familiar with. And most of those products have also expanded their reach and are offering new things to make our life a little bit easier. So it's how do we embrace some of those new concepts, make sure that we're providing the training that our teachers need and that our students are comfortable with it. Because the last thing I want to do is frustrate our students and families during a time when there's been enough frustrations outside of our school system.
Yeah, really excellent point. So this is all about professional grade. It all leads back to what, Mark, you were just saying, free is like a puppy, and it opens up a bag of worms, basically, that can make it really hard. But then also there is the side, and Morri, you touched on this, if you're not using some of the professional grade resources. So this conversation, let's just start with the fact that a business model is your organizational model in order to be sustainable. And that includes the terminology of what a freemium is, which, Mark, you touched on. Freemium comes usually with they're going to back end sell your data, even the nonprofits. That's very dangerous ground. So anything else we want to say as a conversation? Mark, you want to go first?
Sure. I think I touched on it a little bit. I think, if anything, if we're going to use some of those models, it's important that parents are aware that we're using those type of models. Definitely the data privacy concerns are key and critical for us. In Connecticut, they have to sign off on all the privacy agreements, which I think has helped matters here. But we've still had some of those concerns. But I think even if you leave all that to the side, I still think the bigger concern is, what the product's going to offer. And just because it's catchy and engaging on day one, is it adaptive? Is it customizable? Does it support multiple languages? Is it device agnostic? When you ask all of those questions, so a teacher might have found a cool product that kids may like, but there's a series of other questions we need to ask before we go down that road. But I don't want teachers to feel like they have no feedback, because I want them to be innovative and creative and find new things for us to try that can engage students. So it's like, how do we involve them in the process as well? And I think back when we started years ago with Discovery Textbook and how far we've come, and some of the changes that even these professional grade products are making are coming after listening and hearing from our teachers. So how do we give them voice? How do we keep the innovation flowing from the teachers at the same time of not opening up floodgates of problems for us as a district? And most importantly, frustration for our students and families long term as well.
Exactly. Really good points. All right, Morri, I want to ask you to also talk about model a little bit.
I think there's the data privacy issue. I was asked to review an add-on just yesterday, and I wrote back to the teacher, no, did you even look? First of all, the reviews were horrible. And second of all, the amount of data that they're going to take is unreasonable for what the product's going to offer. And so I think it's also just educating some of our teachers on to look at some of those things and what does it mean. I also think that as a technology group or as an instructional group, we also have a lot of people that purchase technology that aren't technically either one of those groups. And so asking them to, we have a form, if you're going to buy this, who's the person who's going to be PD? Who's going to be the lead on troubleshooting? Who's going to be the account manager? Because just because someone even in the district level wants it, because it's good, you've also got to factor in all of those pieces of the puzzle, especially in a small division like ours. We've probably bought 15 more products in the last 5 years since I've been at the division. So onboarding and all of those things are all time consuming. items. One of the things also about freemiums is they eventually don't really let you do what you could do at the beginning. So are you just going to get mad that we're not going to buy it for you because we don't think that it's a valuable product, and you've spent all this time in developing things in it, and then they take away the functionality that you actually liked about the product? So I think there's also just, again, in teaching our staff to kind of read through some of those things, how long are you going to get it? You don't want to end up like with a credit card and you don't know they're about to jack up your rate, or, you know, that, so you've got to kind of teach people that these are some of the things that you need to focus on. Another thing is there's also just some of our products that teachers like. I find the way that companies are packaging the purchasing, that it's unsustainable. So there was one that everybody really liked. Looked into purchasing it, but it's like you get a base price for the product, but then for each teacher to use it, it was like you had to buy bundles, but there was no way to make sure that there were equitable bundles. So the first teacher that got in there could use up all of the quote unquote, you know, stickers in the bundle for their product. And then we've got other teachers that were like, well, hey, I want to go use it for second semester. And now they got nothing. So it's really just also interesting on all the different levels, whether it's privacy, whether it's purchasing, whether it's equity across the division, and then also trying to really make sure if we have a math product, why do we have 3? Do they each serve a different purpose? And if so, that's great. But if we have 3 and they duplicate each other, is there one that's better for a certain grade level, and so we should limit the use? Or is it we should only be using one, because then that would reduce the amount of logins and technical support that you would need? Or do we need coaching into which one you would use at which time? So it's probably enough at the moment to throw out there.
Well, you said a lot there, and I made a lot of notes about that because that's going to all fit in the dictionary. All right. So, thank you. Can you comment on premium pay model?
Yeah, absolutely. As I was listening to you, I was making notes, and I got tickled because some of it reminded me when I was an administrator and working in a district level virtual school. And, you know, I started with the freemium model where teachers were creating things on their own, and I was trying to get contracts here and there from the district so they could do them. And then fortunately had the opportunity to work with a much larger grant and create basically a software as a service. And that's essentially what we do now at EdisonLearning. And you know, the thing I always advise people and advise parents, and I think, Mark, you touched on this, is that data is currency, and nothing is ever free. So either the district's paying for it and it has an appropriate contract in place that you've negotiated and covered a lot of the areas, Morri, that you discussed around training and onboarding and evaluating the actual product. Or if that's not the case, then you're either giving away your data, you're giving away your kids' data, and parents don't recognize that. They don't really see that because they'll sign up for free commercial grade as well. And so I think it's a matter of educating families in the community of online learning. But I am so excited to hear you all talking and recognizing that what freemium really means versus more of software as a service where you're paying for that business model and that support.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's get into next what a bot is and see if we want to comment on this at all. So I'm going to go over to the document that we're in edit on. So web robots, those can be things like those use your Google login everywhere, auto create your ID, you know, or pop-ups, live chat window things. These can be dangerous within a school environment only because kids or teachers don't watch how the student is logging in. So any comments we want to make on bots here? Mark, did this come up for you?
I think it's what drives us crazy now as adults. So why would we want this anywhere near our students? Is the simple question.
Okay.
I think single sign-on is one of those things, we have our students where their screens pop up to the single sign-on. So even at the kindergarten level, they're being taught to go through the single sign-on process. And I always remind the teachers, the reason why you do that is because that's for their safety. It's convenient, but it's really for the student's safety. If they're just going in and bookmarking things, that's not the safest process. And so we want to teach students the safest process.
Good, thank you. Okay, I want to move on to the next one, cost per unit. Are you running into this? And Wendy and Zach, I have you weigh in on this as well, but cost per unit, I don't see that many software companies really being transparent with what is your cost per unit. It's kind of like you got to buy this big giant blob of a thing and we're not going to cut it up and we're not going to tell you what is your cost per unit. So I think this is a hot area of conversation for discerning districts.
Definitely for us, we're getting a lot of it. Oh, this is what it is for school. And I'm like, well, one of my schools is 800, one's 400. And for us, we're getting away from, like, I want to do this in one building. So I don't know if it's our equity agenda or a general, but if it's good for kids, then I want it good for all kids. So the last thing I want with 8 elementary schools is for someone to be at a soccer game raving about something they're doing in one school that we're not doing in another. So I'm more looking to branch the conversation a little bit deeper. And I would say most vendors, you can have a discussion about, look, if you're interested in their product, they're interested in serving you, we can have a discussion about how they're going to cost out the product. So very few that I've worked with are locking us into one funding mechanism. I think there's an openness to, okay, so what do you need? Let's sit down and talk. And for me, what I need is to not have a product being used successfully in one building because I'm going to be asked too many questions. Well, why isn't it in others? And I also don't want to bring in any vendor or product where it's exclusive student choice use. Like, I want to know that it plays a part in enhancing student learning. So I also want to, well, where are we making sure? Where is it embedded into our core curriculum? It could be a choice activity, but it's a choice of these 3 products that teachers are going to guide students to choose. It's not free choice, do whatever you want, or use whatever product teachers maybe have selected as options for their students. It may be 3 products the district is familiar with. Use your choice time to choose one of those 3 options. The other thing is, Morri mentioned single sign-on, and I could say that's been huge for this district. I can't imagine going back to saving passwords and multiple sign-ons ever again. It's just as having a device shouldn't be ever questioned again, single sign-on should never be questioned again as well.
Right, excellent points. Morri.
So I think, Mark kind of put all the pieces together there. That what I did when I came to the division, there was lots of stuff that this school buys this or that school buys that. And I took all of the stuff from the schools and all the stuff from the libraries. And I said, I think there should be a package of division-wide purchases. And then if there is some PTOs or there is some specific needs because there's pre-K at one school and there isn't at another school, there's some reasons why there should be some differentiation, but most of the time, as he was saying, if it's good, everybody should have access to it. And we should actually be looking at our data to make sure we're meeting that CPU amount to verify the cost that we're spending, because if we're not using it, then we shouldn't be buying it. And if they're going to complain that they don't have it, then we should be asking, how do we help embed this into what you're doing more often? Where do you need us to be able to support you so that you are using it? And so I also have kind of a focus of, because I'm not a curriculum specialist, my focus is I like to buy things that students create in. So I want the product to not necessarily be a product that is always curriculum based, that I would like to also purchase products in which the students can show their communication, their creativity, their deeper learning skills, and that it's focused on creation product, not necessarily always a curriculum-based item. And then there's also things of, I was just really excited that, again, you can work with certain companies to get, we now have all of our CBI students from pre-K all the way to 24 now, and they stay on the same product for the whole entire time that they're in our school system. So once the parents get hooked up, then they only have to learn one product. Those students only have to learn one product. So we negotiated just smaller chunks instead of a school-wide license. How do we get this for just those 15 kids and those 4 teachers at that school? And so I think it's just willing to have conversations with each one of your vendors. Because some of our, plus if you buy it in a big punch, you get a big discount. So if all 3 schools are going to buy it, I only have 3 elementary schools, because then they shouldn't have to worry about purchasing. It's also a time suck when people have to deal with purchasing. So I kind of took all that on myself so that all the school level administrators are not having to deal with a lot of purchasing of products.
When we're looking at digital content, I love the idea of, can students create in the product? But we're looking, does it engage? Does it personalize? Does it set individual targets? And does it provide immediate feedback? Because part of the way we got teachers to embrace this digital transformation here in Meriden was by saying, look, this is going to make your job. We acknowledge we're asking you to do so much in 6 hours a day, 180 days a year, with 25 students at all different abilities. Let us leverage technology to provide that support for you to make your job easier, so you can still pull those small groups of students and do your guided reading instruction and your math lessons. So part of our sell to the staff was that this really is a resource to make your job a little bit easier. And I think for many of our teachers, they now are embracing technology and do see it as a help in their classroom, rather than us taking away teacher autonomy from them or their ability to teach. And just as I look at our curriculum, it's non-negotiable. This is what you're going to do. Once we've embedded some digital content in there, I'll know that they're going to do that digital content. And when you're really talking about professional grade products, they do all that. If they give you all that information, they want you as a district to know how well their product is being used. So they're providing all that information that we can share out. So it's helpful to validate that it's being used, but it's also helpful for me sometimes to track teachers who maybe aren't using it as much. And then I could say, hey, what is the issue? Probably wouldn't be me, LeiLani, Barbara Hafner and Sue Moore well. They would be the ones working with the staff. Do we need more professional development for you? Is there a reason? Did that teacher miss the training and that's why the product isn't being used? But that's also where you'll get with the professional grade product. They're going to give you all those metrics, all that data. They want you to see how much their product is being used. And also they're going to continually upgrade their product, and all those content changes are going to be part of your subscription and your cost.
Yeah, and I'd like to piggyback, Mark, you said something that was so valuable. And Morri, I think you echoed it. If a vendor is interested in working with you, then they'll be transparent about the cost per unit. And that's where I think it's so critical to have your vendor as your partner, trying to feed you those reports, showing you how effective the tool is being used. And if they're not willing to break down that cost, then that's not somebody that you want to partner with. And they can, obviously, with the cost of goods sold. I think this is a hot topic, LeiLani. You mentioned that it's a pretty heated term. One thing that I will say is, a lot of companies really dropped their pricing during COVID. LeiLani might strike me down for saying this, but one thing I'll say is it was honestly, I think, out of the goodness of their hearts, but it was also a strategy to get districts in the door and get them kind of hooked. So it was a marketing strategy as well. And so that being said, a lot of districts have been in shell shock of, okay, well, wait a minute, you charged me this last year. And I think, Morri, you alluded to this a little bit about how you get in the door for one price and then it keeps going out, it goes up in tiers. But, they paid a low price last year and then all of a sudden this year it's 4 times that. Well, did the cost of goods change? Why did the price change? And I think that's why it's so important to work with partners that you trust.
And I will also say, in purchasing, I asked that question, how much, before we purchase, how much is your annual increase?
That was always
Very
hidden in
smart.
contracts when I was at the district level. It was like on the very back page, and it was always something to be disputed each year.
Mhm.
So, yeah, again, work with a good partner.
And multi-year discounts are important to me because if we've done our research, we've spent the time, we've vetted a product, and we think it's going to be good for the district, to train everyone and get everyone on board and only use it for a year makes no sense. So we're looking 3 to 5 years out on most of these decisions anyway. So what's your price point at 3 years? And I'll balance the budget enough to help make those type of decisions. Does it make sense to purchase it 5 years and pay it all up front? Does it make sense to do a 3-year, or is the yearly cost worthwhile that we just pay per year? But I'm not looking for a partner for a moment. I'm looking for a partner for an extended stay. And I think sometimes when you open those type of discussions up, the price points change a little bit as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, they do.
Yeah, and I'd like to move on to the next one with this one caveat, and that is, I think, Zach, you're going to show the definition of digital curriculum from that professional grade aspect. I want Morri and Wendy and Mark to think about when you're trying to be your flexible model, the new thing that's happening now is partial affiliation. So if you have a school sell you a school-based model and you've got some homeschooler who still wants to be in your science lab, a highly flexible model of pricing for one-off is coming. It's necessary in the market. So go ahead, Zach, and then I'm going to ask for those comments.
Yeah, so this is I'm just going to show you, as Wendy mentioned earlier, we have a lot of different courses, 150 different courses that we offer. I'm just going to kind of show you what our digital curriculum, how robust it can be, but also keep in mind how customizable all of this can be as well. So if we look, we have a 4-part biology course. It's attempting to mimic 4-semester here, but I'm going to go ahead and show you what our digital curriculum has to offer. You can see all of our lessons here. We have 15 lessons per unit, which would be 45 lessons per part. And so in a 4-part course, that would be 180 lessons. And so what our digital curriculum will cover will be highly aligned to different state standards. We have an entire content team that will align these to any state standards. And then to break down the individual lessons of the curriculum product, we have a lot of different learning objects within the lesson. So the essential instruction would be just the essential instruction of the lesson. Videos are going to be embedded. Another thing I'd like to mention is that these are highly, the accessibility of the products that you're looking for is extremely important. And then the commercial grade or professional grade, we take that very seriously. So text to speech, all of those different tools that will help all of your students learn. And so embedded will have different apps, but they're completely embedded. I think we have some definitions later on in this work that we're doing today. We have textbooks, proprietary textbooks that students will work through. Each one of our textbooks will have activities for students to answer, as well as answer keys embedded into our program. And as a student is completing these learning objects, they're working through an entire lesson where the teacher isn't completing them. The teacher isn't necessarily having to lesson plan or create these videos like you might see in many other products, but it's really designed to be kind of that one-stop shop for your lessons. And that's an example of our curriculum, our digital curriculum that we offer.
Great. So we're back on that definition. Doug can pass me back the share content. Based on what you just showed me, that is the difference between what is what we call discrete digital curriculum and digital product that is the comprehensive scope and workflow with all the materials in it. Put a note here that when we revise this definition, we need to include the definition of essential instructional components. So I'm going to go back to that earlier question that I just asked before you showed us that, which is, the disaggregation of licensing and then also the discrete pieces. Those are trends that we see as Learning Council based on our review of what people are answering on all of our surveys as essential thinking points for leaders that, again, disaggregation down to individual license and disaggregation to discrete piece. So Mark, do you want to go first?
First thought would be, especially with teacher shortages and how are we going to fill all these vacancies, it's all right here, especially in some of these specialty areas. So where you need a science cert, or I can't find a physics teacher, is the curriculum all right there? And for those who wanted to access that on their own, maybe some of the typical homeschoolers may say, okay, well, I'm going to do that on their own. But those who've always embraced more of an in-person style, it may be the physics curriculum that's already aligned, and I may not someday have to have a physics teacher per se. I'll have someone who's great with students helping facilitate these efforts in person, and I'll have some who, rather than homeschooling, chose to do the physics class online as a group. So I do see multiple opportunities, and I think we're waiting for, and hopefully some of the benefit from the pandemic could be that some of the state agencies are going to embrace some of these type of learning concepts as well, because I think we're seeing teacher shortages in areas that we've never seen shortages before, and I think it's going to open up a bigger discussion around digital curriculum and content.
Yeah, and I know your comment before I come back to you, Morri, but your model is different, right, at Edison, where you actually can provide the teacher or use their teacher. Am I right?
Yeah, and actually we do either way. We partner with districts, and we have teachers certified in multiple states. So if a district, and that happens a lot, and, you know, it used to just be math, science, or foreign language teachers that they couldn't find, right? And so we're finding, especially this year, that we're getting requests just to teach full sections of students in districts where they have the teacher shortage. So that's really the benefit of having the instructional team, is we can help fill that gap too, and then we can still provide the curriculum. You know, one of the things, LeiLani, in response to the question, one of the things that we did, we actually changed our offerings a little bit this fall, and we launched a direct-to-consumer, so a direct-to-families product. So that's really for those homeschool students. And oftentimes we have advisors who are guidance counselors, they're certified, and oftentimes we find them having the conversation very similar to what you described. And we make sure they know that we are accredited, because that's always important when a school is getting credit from somewhere else, right? We want them to know that we're accredited, and then we ask them to make sure the school will accept the credit if they take a class through us. So if they're if they're in that partial affiliation, right? So that way they can fill both of those roles. But it is much more common, and again, that's why we launched that this fall.
Interesting. Okay, so coming to you, Morri, for your comments on all this.
I think there's there's so many different things, and we all want education to change, but we are not exactly quite sure what we want it to become. And so I think that having these digital curriculum opportunities, again, I was a online teacher for 7 years, and some of it was working through what we called like a PACE program, which was that rebound program of, you know, the student didn't pass the first semester. So how do we have them during quarter 3 also be working on regaining partial credit for semester 1? And so I feel like there's that role that our digital curriculum providers do a really good job of making it so we don't have to tax a teacher on to sit down and reteach something, and having pre-tests, and you get to test out of things, or we can select and customize which parts of a unit that a student has to complete, and it's kind of self-paced, but you again have that person in the room or that check-in person that does a virtual meeting with the student in a homebound situation, you know, once a week or whatever the hours requirements are. So I think there's that option. And then also, I know the reason why students actually took classes with me, and it was more of that they loved taking another subject. And so they wanted to take 4 years of band in the building. And to be some of these upper level classes, that meant that you had to take some of your elective classes online. And so they were taking them in addition to what they were already completing in school. And so that's just a whole nother, depending on, like, there was specialty centers and things like that. So they had a prescripted, kind of like college, this is what you have to do to graduate with this from the specialty center. And that didn't leave a whole lot of wiggle room. So that's another great space in which we were able to use digital curriculum that was provided. And then I also see that there are some times where our teachers are teaching something for the first year. And they really, while they might be a history person, they might not be an expert in World War I. And so if we can support them for possibly a year, or we have a co-teacher that is teaching the class because the other person's out for a long-term sub, like that's another flexibility model that allows for solid curriculum to be delivered, plus that personal part of having the teacher that's in the classroom. We do offer that for some of our students. Again, if you're we don't have anybody that teaches sign language. So if you want to take sign language, you're going to take that through the online platform. And you actually can take it as an 8th class, or you can take it as a study hall online class, where you would have a teacher that's there for you to be able to troubleshoot and monitors logins and and that gives the data back to the schools. And we were actually really excited this year that one of our providers is integrated with our LMS. Because one of the problems that we've had when you go all digital curriculum, and then you've got pieces and parts of a student's academic career in different systems. So seeing that now that it's integrated into our LMS, the admin, the parent, and then the advisors can all see the student's progress in real time, instead of an extra weight of that person that's kind of monitoring. Because right now she's got 67 classes that she's monitoring for our online students. That having her have to update everybody on everyone's progress is, again, another time suck. So how do we help her? This integration is now going to be something that's going to be valuable, again, for that student, and then also the rest of us to be able to support that student in real time.
Excellent comments. Thank you. Thank you all. I think we have talked already a bit about free mobile apps, free web apps, lesson time used. But I know that there's some, if we can do a quick show from you, Zach, on those things.
Yeah, so honestly, I don't have much to show. I think the comment that I'd like to make is, with our instructional staff, one of the things that I can appreciate, I think Morri and you had mentioned this, is just the amount of training and the amount of professional development that goes into that. At EdisonLearning, with our instructional staff, we are constantly training our teachers on PII and FERPA and how to protect and safeguard student data. Because even though the LMS and our what I showed you earlier, that's all in-house, we still have an instructional staff that loves to teach, right, and to engage students to supplement and to engage and build relationships with them. So we have to be extremely mindful of that. And our instructional staff, we are intensively training them, always connecting with them. We actually have a third-party application approval process if they want to use any kind of apps or any kind of services outside. And it is tough, Morri. I was really I was with you on that. It's sometimes it's hard to say, no, that's not what that's not what's going to be most effective here. Let's bring it back in. And as a parent, I can appreciate it too, because last year with my son, I was signing into 8 different apps. I had to remember the password for whatever app this was and whatever app you had for science class. It was very, very tough. So. And that's all the comment that I had. I don't really have anything to show you as far as the training that we do is concerned, but know that we do a ton of it all the time.
Okay, excellent. All right, well then we're on our final point here, and I think this was one I want to start off with you, Mark, on, and that is there are subcontractors often in your contracts that are offering software as a service that can ping subroutine things underneath the umbrella of, so they're pinging outside. And sometimes that you've signed off with the prime contractor, but it's got subs, party apps and plugins that may be doing things like taking data that are not part of your contract with the prime, but they're ignored by the prime with their subs.
We have not really had to deal with that here in district. And I don't know if it's because in Connecticut, they have to sign off. The state has a sign-off form that vendors need to make sure around data privacy. Maybe that scares them away from Connecticut, but we haven't really dealt with that here.
To say we might need you to repeat the two scenarios. I wasn't able to hear you during that time period, but I can tell you a scenario that we have in our state. So the state didn't directly buy a contract with an LMS, but its a virtual program did. And so they were offering that LMS for free for any division that wanted to purchase it. And so it kind of backdoored into a state contract indirectly. And thinking about, for us, did we want to transfer from one product to another, thinking about cost? And I had to kind of ask, so what are the other things that we would have to pay for to get? Right now you get the full, it's kind of like a freemium, you get the full robust with these other add-ons inside of it that we would be responsible for taking over at some point, or including in our budget so that we could have them as add-ons inside of that product. And so most basic products that we're purchasing that are curriculum don't necessarily have those, but it's more of the larger thing like an LMS or something like, this curriculum that may have, that there's a certain kind of software that they're using for video conferencing, or there's a certain kind of software that they're using to convert YouTube videos to make it playable by people that have YouTube blocked. So there's things like that are happening that you just, the way I think you go around that is you really have to ask for a demo. And you have to get into these products and play with them. And another thing I would just say as a former online person that worked in some of these products is also check the links. There was one curriculum that we bought one time for sociology, and the first 3 lessons had 4 broken links. And so that tells me a lot about the product. And either they're understaffed or they are not maintaining, because as an online teacher, I know like it could have worked 2 weeks ago and it doesn't work today because the company decided to museum reorganize their whole entire website, and now that link no longer works. But do they have a process in place in order to either find some new content or to be able to notify themselves that this is broken, instead of us just emailing and saying, hey, this doesn't seem to be working?
Yeah. There should be some Autobots that are checking those links built into their program. I mean, that's not hard. Okay. So we've had a really good conversation about what is professional grade, how do we manage this whole scene. I want to make sure that we have your comments before I wrap up. Is there anything that we missed? Mark?
No, I don't think so. I think one thing that I wanted to add is, just as if I was going to buy a vehicle, I don't need every add-on and every extra of the vehicle. I don't need every add-on or extra that a product may offer. But I would say make sure that you price out some of those add-ons so you know what you're going to pay later if you want to add them on, and then you'll make your decision. But there's so many add-ons. You could add on so much stuff, bury your teachers and staff in training that you really don't need. So stay true to what the initial purpose for the product was, and don't lose sight of all the additional add-ons, because some of them may come, by this one, we'll give you these extra 3, and you didn't need any of the 4 add-ons. So
I would say there's 2 things that I would add. One kind of to that effect. There are some vendors where, they decide to change things mid-year. And you really want to talk them out of making any major changes, if it can be, prior to the beginning of August, mid-August. We went back on August 23rd with our students. So if they're trying to, I was just talking to a vendor yesterday and they're saying, oh, well, there's this new pricing structure. We're taking away this part, but we're putting on this part. So I was like, I got something for free and now I'm going to have to pay for it. And that was never, because I did a multi-year contract. They're like, oh, we forgot to talk to you about it. So I think that's also of knowing some of your partners of if they are like, again, the add-on model. Hey, this is something that we're rolling out. It's going to be really great, but now you have to purchase it. So it's not your bottom line price. And so the other part I would also say with that is kind of what Mark was alluding to is make sure that your teachers are 100% aware of what is the purpose of the product. And then who is the valuable user? So is it my librarians that are the key person and they should be training the students, and then the regular gen ed teacher can use it because the students have been trained? Or is it only something that's going to be used in library? And really then is that cost effective if they're only using it in library? And really having those discussions so that you're, again, leveraging the money for the best use of all of your students. And something that then everybody can use effectively.
Good. Excellent points. Thank you. Final comment.
Okay. Well, I'll jump in. As I look at the list of words, and I'm reflecting on the conversation, there have been some really astute observations about what you're really looking for when you talk to a vendor and a partner. And I'm wondering if software as a service might need to be pulled out in this list of definitions and maybe even include within it, I don't know if it would be helpful to people, but a checklist of some of the items that we discussed today. I know that always has helped me, and I heard a lot of similar things, but you guys said some wonderful things. You're very conscientious of what you're implementing, and even around subcontractors, LeiLani, we at EdisonLearning, if we have subcontractors that get anywhere near student data, they all have background checks. Sorry, my phone was going off. They all have background checks, right? And we can guarantee that. And I think that's something that needs to be negotiated in a software as a service contract to make sure that everything is protected for your students and your teachers.
So I was just thinking about one other thing is that we actually usually ask to know who are the other people around us that are using the product. So that we can get especially if it's a new one, so we can get feedback and ask them like, what are the things, how's their support? Did you find their PD helpful? And some people are like, no, do it in-house. It's better probably for you to do it than for them to do it. So having those conversations with colleagues of somebody who already uses the product, I think is also a very valuable thing that sometimes we forget about.
Good point. Good point. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. This has been another EduJedi activity to bring order to everyone's understanding of what's going on with digital curriculum. Our next activity will be J10. What you don't know about software can hurt your school scene. We're going to be discussing hostile characteristics in the next activity. But thank you all. Until next time, this is LeiLani Cauthen, your host, ending off for now, and hope to see you at the next activity. Goodbye for now.